Chapter 28, Lecture B today. I'm not going to lecture for a long time. We'll probably break it up. I'll probably go ahead and I'll try to post the quiz after this, the final quiz. If there is one, I got to double check on the things. Just for time purposes, I got a lot going on today. I'll at least do a 5 to 10 minute lecture here. We'll break it up. There's nothing new next week outside of maybe one more lecture that I'll either do in class or post over the weekend. Big thing is we'll probably look maybe either next Friday or the following Monday, this May 6th for the final, all right? So we'll kind of have a floating final right there. I'm going to probably put it all online. I got to rewrite it online, but the test itself is out there. Okay, so yesterday we left off with the Hurricane Katrina and Bush. Now we're going to talk about battle over the border. Fears of terrorists crossing the border emerge with older worries about undocumented immigration between Bush and Obama. The increased size of the border patrol officers. We talked about a little bit of that. I think we talked about the whole slide here, talking about the court and the president. Okay, we did not get to the midterm elections 2006. Bush's popularity plummeted because of the Iraq War and Katrina. Both houses swung to Democratic control since the first time since the 90s. Nancy Pelosi became the first female Speaker of the House. She is once again the Speaker of the House currently. Bush left office with a 22% approval rating. They have since done a new rating of him post his presidency by a decade, and he has risen to over 50% approval rating once again. So as we reflect and look back on Bush's presidency, though there were some issues and definitely some problematic things that happened, people are now much more understanding of things that happened and some things that were outside of his control. Does that make sense? So like the economic recession that he gets blamed a lot of times for was not all his fault. The biggest critique still remained to be Katrina and the Iraq War. No one critiques the Afghan War for the most part. No one critiques a lot of the other recession policies and stuff because some of that stuff was unavoidable by what had already been established before him. But his approval rating has skyrocketed in the last several years. The housing bubble. The economy entered a recession in 2008, American banking system suddenly found itself on the brink of collapse. Causes were economic speculation, free will spending, get-rich-quick schemes, low interest rates pushed housing prices high, overspending on homes and max credit cards, bad banking practices, basically some repeat problems of the 20s. Spending money we didn't have, too much debt. Americans now instantly found themselves, their homes being repossessed, decrease in construction. It was a huge setback. So the Great Recession of the late 2000s, overbuilding had reached the point where home production prices began to fall, so homes became cheap. People bought homes and now they couldn't sell them, they were losing money. Borrowers defaulted and banks suddenly found themselves with billions of dollars of worthless investments. Banks stopped lending money, interest rates plummeted, Americans cut back on spending, the economy ground to a resounding halt. The conspiracy against the public, selling mortgages they knew were going to fail and taking insurance on them. This illegal practice or this pretty, I don't know what the word you will call it, conniving way. Basically, banks got exposed for really bad banking policies, or basically screwing Americans over. Tax evasions, fraud, etc. came to light. Bernard Madoff, Wall Street investor, ran a Ponzi scheme and got rich off scamming of individuals that were supposedly investing, but he got rich himself and they got nothing. So there was a lot of bad practices in the late 2000s. Bush in the crisis persuaded a reluctant Congress to appropriate $70 billion to bail out floundering firms. Crisis also revealed the limits of the American social safety net. Banking system remained fragile but would recover a little bit later. So the 2008 campaign, as President Bush's presidency came to a thudding end, Senator Obama and John McCain squared off. The polar opposites of each other, and obviously the polar opposites of Bush. McCain had almost won the nomination back in 2000 against Bush, and now many thought this might be his chance. The problem was there was such a negativity for Bush across the board that any Democrat that ran probably was going to have a sizable chance to win. Barack Obama with very little experience, and I put that out there because he was not a long-standing senator in Congress. He was a junior senator who happened to run. Sarah Palin chose her as McCain's running mate. McCain thought by choosing a woman kind of rogue would have been a good move. It actually was a disastrous backfire, which cost him on the grand scheme of things when Palin's debatability and some of her beliefs came out stronger. Obama's promise of change seemed more appealing than ever. He ran on the whole promise of change. He swept into victory, winning several key Republican strongholds and winning pretty much all the moderate vote. The age of Obama came about. Republicans seemed out of date by 2000 that had been going since the late 60s. Democrats also had 60 senators and a large majority of Congress. They had control of everything in 2008. Obama's first inauguration offered a stark rebuke to 8 years of Bush policies and more broadly to the premises that had been shaped government policy since the election of Reagan. Obama also represented the first minority president in the history of the United States, and he also offered a much younger, he was only in his early 40s when he took office, so a much different perspective of president. Obama in office. We'll do a little bit of Obama in office and we'll probably call it a day. Obama in office, one thing, he barred the use of torture, launched an initiative to repair relations with Muslim world, abortion rights. He was the polar opposite to some degrees to President Bush. He will appoint 2 females to the Supreme Court. The first one will be Sonia Sotomayor, first Hispanic on the court, and later Kagan. New Deal and Great Society budget. He really wanted a massive budget for a lot of domestic programs. He pushed through an $800 billion in new government spending in his first couple years of office. His biggest thing that he pushed for and ultimately got, though there have been some changes since to it, the healthcare debate. They passed what was known at that time as the Affordable Health Care Act, or better known as Obamacare. After months of increasingly bitter debate, in March 2010, Congress passed a sweeping health care bill that passed by a few votes. Offered subsidies to persons of modest incomes and aroused strong partisan opposition. The ironic thing about this is the individuals that were on the border about it, that their states did not want it passed, most of all the congressional support that was kind of on the middle ground was voted out of office in 2010. So there is a rebuke to President Obama that is often not talked about, but the House was flipped in 2010, and there's a huge transformation of a government starting in 2010 in the midterm of Obama. So Obama had 2 years of basically not unchecked, but immense power. He could get whatever he want pushed, and then the healthcare debate. After that, he loses a lot, and then by 2012, the next midterm and major elections, the Democrats lose both houses of Congress, and they didn't regain the House until this last election. So you can see that there is a huge shift here in paradigm thinking. Financial reform, laws to overhaul regulation, the financial industry, obviously with all the problems of the 2000s, growing in partisan policies. Healthcare failed to include a public option, underestimated the depth of the crisis, and continued the Bush admin policy of pouring money into the banks. So some of the policies that Obama had critiqued on Bush, he continued on. The problem of inequality, Obama in office 2. Economic recovery finally gained momentum about 2009, 2010. Unemployment was falling, but low income among several large companies still stagnated the economy. There was an Occupy Wall Street movement, protest against growing economic equality, decline, opportunity of the banks, basically malfeasance, or basically their bad tendencies. Over the next few weeks, hundreds of people camped out in the park, spurred a movement among low-paid workers to demand a raise, and then 1/5 of American children lived in poverty by 2015. And the middle class continued to shrink. And these people that occupied Wall Street would literally go in, set in Wall Street, the building there, and just occupy it. They didn't do anything else. It was like kind of a silent protest. So, Obama's presidency, by 2012, is not assured he's going to be reelected. His numbers had dipped, and the economy was still shaky. I'll be honest, Obama's presidency is not as good as some make it out to be, and it's not as bad as some make it out to be. I think the thing about him is he came in with all this change, wanted to be a difference from Bush. He got into office because he didn't have a lot of experience. He realized, wait a second, some of the things I ran on, I cannot necessarily, they're not accurate, right? So like one of his promises that he ran on was pulling out of Iraq instantly. It took us 2 to 3 years after his presidency till 2011, I think it was, that we finally pulled the forces out from the Operation Iraqi Freedom and all that. He realized when we got in there was not as an easy solution as it was, and he tried to get us out of Afghanistan, and obviously that did not come to fruition. Okay, we'll finish up the Obama presidency in the 2000s, probably Monday or Tuesday. I will have the Chapter 28 quiz, if there is one, posted here momentarily. Make sure you've got the study guide, looking at it as posted online. Have a wonderful weekend and day.